Good day to you from Chico, California. It's August 10th, a Sunday here, and we're currently engaged in a couple of discovery vectors which are related and overlap. One has to do with science, discovering the secrets of nature, and the other one has to do with simply being human. What is life? Well, nature and life are obviously associated, but we're quite different as humans from the ecology because we have this other side that the animals do not seem to possess, because it seems they don't need it. They're more or less just doing what they were programmed to do. Humans obviously partake of that same mechanism, that we're simply doing what we were programmed to do. But as humans, we have another dimension to our perception of life, that we're aware of it in some extra way. The curious aspect of humanity has been explored in this way that I am exploring it for quite a while, with quite a bit of debate. For instance, the feelings of animals. Is it reasonable to say that they are so different from us? It's really just in one sense, but it's rather hard to define, although we seem to be aware of it. And so there is this controversy. What is it that we're aware of as humans that perhaps the animals are not? And is that even a reasonable difference? Is there any difference? I have heard said hundreds of times in my lifetime by hippies, by Eastern meditationers, by spiritists, spiritualists, all kinds of classifications of people's attitude toward life, where almost universally I am contradicted. And I essentially do understand the contradiction involved, but it's so interesting to consider that I simply will not let go of my insistence against anybody's disagreement in any way that humans are fundamentally different from the ecology. And it's not just the animals. If you wanted to take examples from the animal kingdom of those animals that are perhaps most closely related to humans, it would be almost undoubtedly the porpoises, that is, the undersea mammals, including the whales, which appear to have an extraordinary intelligence. But I don't believe that it's intelligence that distinguishes us from the ecology. Also, even experimenters who care nothing for this question, really, but are interested in biology, well, reasonably so. As scientists, you would have to expect this. But again, I don't consider it to be relevant to my question. But what they say is that the chimpanzees, and really the primates, including the gorillas and several other kinds of primate, are extremely closely related to humans. It has been pointed out more often than I can count that the DNA of a chimpanzee is 99% identical with that of a human. And yet I continue, and always have continued to insist, that you're missing the point. That none of these facts are relevant in any way to the question that I ask, which all men, I'll just say, who look in this direction, we all ask this question. I am certainly not the first to ask the question, what makes humans so special? On the philosophical side, going even to cosmology, which I don't see how is related at all, but it's almost a desperate search, from my personal point of view, a desperate search for some answer other than the correct answer, that everybody is evading the actual question by any means, where they would do anything to avoid the question that I'm asking, by contradicting me in any way possible. Now, I don't argue with these people ever. Sometimes the conversation becomes so bogged down that it's obvious, really, at least to me, that there's no conversation going on at all. Perhaps because I'm obstinate. Perhaps because my interlocutor is obstinate. I couldn't care less. I'm not interested in controversy or debate or who is right or wrong. But I will continue to ask my question until I'm able to answer it. The problem with answering the question correctly, what makes humans different? What makes humans human? What makes us different from the ecology? What makes us special in any way? What are we? What are we doing here? Why do we have consciousness? Why are there so many of us? This leads to scientific inquiries which I've undertaken since the age of 17. I've made enormous progress, but you'd never know it if what I were doing were consensual science. And this is true in other categories. I find I've made great inroads into my understanding of the cosmos at all scales, including the extremely small subatomic and the extremely large galactic and supergalactic, even into the nature of the universe somehow as a unit, composing it somehow by its fundamental forces, perhaps, expressing the atom in a way that actually makes sense and a human can understand it and gain something from it. At all times, you have to ask, certainly in the background, why? Why are we doing this? Why, for instance, do I feel so compelled to keep addressing the question out of pure curiosity, but only restricted to one aspect of the whole question? It's not just curiosity. It's absolute necessity. Speaking for myself. What is a human? Why are we here? I find that I must answer these questions. And so I might be expected to answer a direct question to myself. Why do I feel so compelled to do that which nobody else gives a living shit about? Nobody cares. Except to answer inadequately, incompletely, immaturely, illogically, evasively, foolishly. Why would I be the only person, and I'm not saying I am, but this is more or less a perception that I have of my immediate human environment, which admittedly is quite limited, as would be for all of us. We can't possibly meet all of the billions of people on Earth, even the adult males, just limiting it to that would be about 1 billion people. 1 billion adult males right now, between 1 and 2 billion. It's quite a large number. It's impossible to meet all those people. When you add the men, full-grown male adults who are dead, that's another 1 to 2 billion people. Where do people come from? Why are we so constructed to be so neurotic? I do admit that my point of view has a neurotic aspect. Because shouldn't I just be happy, as Krishnamurti said? Shouldn't I just be at peace? Shouldn't I just accept? Isn't life good enough for me? That's a reasonable question. I've endeavored to answer that question. But the solution that I've come up with has not varied since the age of 17 when I first asked this question openly to the universe and looked for an answer. I got an immediate answer, and it's never changed. And from my point of view, it's absolutely correct, and it's the only answer. Well, that raises a problem in my environment. That's not allowed. That's not playing by the rules. We're supposed to be discoursing at all times, so the hippies can have their say, so the spiritists can have their say. Otherwise, I'm placing myself above them as a know-it-all. Well, that's not playing by the rules in my society or my culture. And I substantially agree with the motive behind the emotional reaction. That changes nothing. Certainly, from a scientific point of view, either you know or you don't. From a philosophical point of view, either the question is relevant in some way that you can put it in context, or you can't. And the rules vary again with religion. Either you're going to heaven or you're not. And of course, it's an age-old joke now. Either you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. Well, I think my society certainly, but I've traced it back, and this is really nothing new. You're being crazy. There is no heaven. There is no hell. Well, that's where I just dropped the subject, because I don't believe in heaven and hell in the way that they're being reinterpreted in the minds of those who do not like those ideas. Well, they certainly have a right not to like those ideas. One of them is hell, and the other one is fantasy. They're actually both fantasy, from the point of view of someone who is not myself. So we're involved with this question that seems to be universal. But as I've pointed out so many times, there is no question of this nature, a substantially universal question that all humans seem to ask. We don't ask this question in the same way. A case could be made that it's impossible for any of us to answer that kind of a question in the same way. That would seem to break down the necessary difference between us that makes us individuals. We certainly, as a race of beings, so closely related to the ecology that it seems that we are part of the Earth ecology, we do not cooperate at all. We're absolutely individualistic. And even that's not true, because we come together to procreate. And we cooperate to raise our children, most of the time. We even cooperate to build houses in our community. I've seen in the Indonesian islands. This was documented by two British journalistic explorers in a series called The Ring of Fire, when they came to a certain village, and I think it was on the island of Java or Borneo, but one of the large Indonesian islands. The community welcomed them as honored guests from the outside, and they all got together as a community and built these two men a house and helped them in every way. I feel actually emotional about that, because that is so unusual. It's not atypical, though. Such behavior occurs in all cultures, but not throughout the culture. Certainly here in America, that would be most difficult to do. We see homeless people who arose within the past 20 years, a glut of homeless people. All of a sudden there are millions of people out on the street with no shelter and no way to get back into the flow of society, just a natural life. If we truly were a Christian nation, those people would not be homeless. So it's obvious that we can't do what we say we would like to do as decent human beings. I find this most problematical. I myself have faced the same questions. I'm supposed to be giving alms to the poor as an Islam person, or as a Christian, or really as any religious person who does believe in a supernatural side to life, that there is something superior to humans. And that's where I would like to begin in this brief discussion of humanity. It's easy to read the papers and see that humanity is hopeless. It's easy to see that the ecology is destroyed and cannot repair itself, and humans will never be able to do their job to take care of the earth. Instead, due to forces beyond anyone's control and beyond any hope of correction, the major forces that determine the fate of the earth are fully decided on destroying the earth no matter what, and nothing can stop it. I'll give one example which was pointed out to me by a close friend of mine recently, who is equally disgusted with this aspect of reality among humans. He pointed out to me that the Japanese, whom I had just in our conversation cited as a culture, that they're extremely cultured people. And this man is no fool. He knew what I was saying, but he didn't buy what I said at all. He said that the Japanese are still hunting the whales, no matter what the world opinion about that action is. That there are all too few whales left. Why would anybody hunt the whales? They're a modern, industrialized society. Admittedly, there are too many of them, as there are too many Chinese, as there are too many of everybody. The earth is overpopulated. But men have always behaved like this, whether there were few of us or many of us. From the beginning of human history, there has been slavery. Disregarding how we treat the ecology, when one considers how humans treat each other, it's clear that there is satanic activity. And I'm not saying that that's an angel. I'm not saying that that's a jinn or a spirit or even a supernatural being. You need look no farther than the human male to discover Satan. It's inside us. Satan is us. As Pogo said back in the 1930s, I believe it was, in a cartoon strip, we have met the enemy, and they is us. Highly grammatically incorrect, but quite memorable to my parents and my parents' generation. We have met Satan, and we need look no further than the mirror to discover where Satan is. What does that mean? We can't correct it. It's beyond recall. There is no feedback system. There is no United Nations. That's just that organized body is illusory. It does not serve its purpose at all. And the actions of Israel prove that. It would be as if there were United Nations in Europe in the 1930s that said, Russia, stop torturing your citizens, and Hitler, stop trying to kill all the Jews. And then, oh my God, Stalin would have fallen down in tears. Oh my God, the United Nations just rebuked me. And perhaps he would even commit suicide. And all the Politburo would just shoot each other, and the Russian people would go free, and we would have 1,000 years of peace. In Germany, Hitler would be attacked by his own people, hung upside down and beaten to death, along with all of the Nazis. You know it's not that easy. And there was no such governing body, and the United Nations is ridiculous. All of which is to say that the situation is hopeless. And so whether you're philosophical, religious, logical, or atheist, we're all equal before this conundrum. Why is humanity destroying itself, the ecology, and the entire earth? I don't know if you realize it or not, but even if all the nations suddenly got together and just laid down their arms by some magic without supernatural intervention, I would have to put it, just all of a sudden by some spontaneous meeting of minds, we all went, what the hell have we been doing? And then suddenly, everyone is working in peace. If that were to happen, I am willing to state, it's still too late. The earth is very soon going to be uninhabitable. Whether or not the insects survive what's happening is just a matter of guesswork, some form of immature, puerile faith or hope. But we see the destruction of everything that human beings ever were that was any good at all. It's over. We lost some war. I actually look at it that way. From one point of view. I take many points of view because there are several points of view to take into consideration. In undertaking to explain or somehow rationalize the horror of millennia of slavery, brutality, murder, extortion, theft, wholesale rape, injustice to the weak, to women, to children, exploitation, monstrous behavior right in front of your very eyes every day. The news publications concentrate on these issues almost to the exclusion of anything else. If you look for hope from science, I hope you're disillusioned. Otherwise, I would classify you as in some way retarded. In other words, this is deadly serious. David Bohm took it so. Now, Krishnamurti, whom I have been listening to lately because I very much enjoy the way he speaks and the way he addresses questions. I find it's personally helpful to me. As for his philosophy, I consider it to be neutral. I'm sure that he's not a negative force, but nobody is a positive force. There is no positive force. Is there not? Have you asked everybody? Have I asked everybody? Logically, absolutely logically. And I'm now going to state what I have known since the age of 17. Whether to convince you of anything or change your mind in any way no longer concerns me, because of what I've learned empirically about trying to communicate with my fellow human beings. Any answer that I may have come up with will be limited to myself. When I tried to share, both in the churches, so-called, and believe me, I got around, and in science, which is more or less limited to my YouTube platform, there is no response. It's not absolutely nothing, and I don't believe I've wasted my time. And at the age of 17 or 18, when I realized what I was into, the conclusions that I reached, which I realized would never change for the rest of my life, because I got mine, mate. I reached what I wanted to reach by the age of 18. And nothing has changed since then, except to confirm the absolute truth that I found, which apparently is incommunicable. If so, that changes nothing for me. I am not required to help anybody. From an objective point of view, nobody has ever helped me, and that's not true. But it's subjective. I would have to convince you that somebody helped me. You would resist me, you would contradict me, you would not accept that somebody actually helped me because you have your own idea. What I find from this lifelong confrontation with people that I've reached out to or listened to communicate with them, there's an absolute difference that I don't find is ever violated, except there's always a footnote. That if you're determined to not know anything real, from my point of view, that there's nothing that I can add to what you know, I can't help you at all, you'll never change. there won't be someone better than me that comes along that wakes you up. You'll stay the way you are. And I have very rarely heard that said, if ever, except very recently when I started reading the Qur'an, which, as you know, is a holy book to the Islam people. And boy, is that putting it mildly. The Islam people respect the Qur'an, written by Muhammad, peace be upon him. They revere that book more highly than any human being has ever revered any book in the Bible or the entire Bible combined. I'm stating that obviously subjectively, but from my point of view, those people are dead serious about their religion. What is it like to be Islam? And what convinces me that they know what I know? It's because of what Muhammad said in one of the surah. And I will merely paraphrase it, but you could look it up rather easily, especially if you're familiar with scholastic research. You would be able to, if you want the exact quote, I will respond to any comments, but I know that you won't ask me. I don't get comments because nobody either, first of all, because nobody really knows that I'm here, but there have been about 10,000 people who've run across my station. It's not sour grapes. I knew what I was getting into when I started broadcasting. I do this for me. But part of what I do as a human is religious. To help people. To reach out to them. To see if there's anything I can do with what I know to help them with their problems. Well, what it says in the Qur'an about that is a person who has made up their mind that they will never knuckle under to heaven, they will never acknowledge the sovereignty of God, whatever that even means to them, that they will resist, they'll be obstinate to their dying day. That's actually true. And nobody can ever reach in to fix them. And so it's somewhat miraculous and somewhat contradictory that there are so many people who believe this, who obviously take the opposite point of view. That they know the way to heaven, at least in principle, and encourage others to go that way rather than the way that it appears they're going that makes them so miserable. What I wish to point out, just in passing, since I am a Christian, and that's not a contradiction, to be a Christian and Islam, that's the only kind of Christian there is. I've always been Islam. I just recently found out that I'm Islam because only the Islam people actually believe in Jesus as a prophet. What they don't believe in is that he's God. Which makes sense because neither did Jesus. And his name is Yeshua. Let's at least be respectful, no matter how retarded you are, no matter how hateful and confused you are, no matter how immature and illogical you are. You still have a duty to be respectful to people around you. Even if you think they're idiots, they're superstitious, backwards shitheads, that does not excuse you from making fun of them. I could name some names that call themselves scientists, even PhDs, but you can't do that. But if I say that that man's name is Yeshua, then you goddamn well accept what I say because I know what I'm saying. They themselves would pronounce his name a little bit differently, but not with a J sound and not with a Z. Those are English sounds, but that man was not English. So all of this is to say the Islam people are right au point with me. They believe almost exactly what I believe, and in all the most important points they know what I've known since the age of 17 for me. So how come there are about 100,000 adult male Islam people, 100 million adult male Islam people who believe almost exactly what I've believed all my life, but nobody in America believes at all what I believe, and I have direct evidence of that. Why is it that I'm Islam, but no other Americans that I've ever discovered are even close to knowing the truth about who they are, about what is this ecology, what is this experiment, what is this game? I believe that all adult male Islam people actually know what I know. And I wonder, can they reach other people? Because I certainly never did. I don't believe I've ever converted a person from their obstinacy in any way, even though I can see that they might benefit. Oh no. Oh no. And I don't want to go into detail on that because it's rather negative, and I'm a positivist. I believe in a good outcome for everything. But you know there's a huge footnote. No, when it comes right down to it, all the religions, really from the beginning of time, have stated the matter absolutely clearly, and although perhaps in different syntactic form or by a different construction or framework, they all say the same thing. Either you're going to make it or you're not. You're either going to achieve what a human being is supposed to achieve so that the plan can be fulfilled for you, whereby you're happy, or you're not. You're going to fail. But Islam makes a very, very decided case out of it, and so does Yeshua. So Christianity and Islam are the same religion because they say exactly the same thing. And I can confirm that because that's exactly what I learned directly by enlightenment from heaven without the intervention of much more than just a few verses that I heard from a teacher. At the age of 17, I was fully committed to the way of heaven so that I could not fail unless I did something to violate what I already knew, which I don't believe I've ever done, but I do pray about it regularly. I pray with tears lately because I'm getting close to death. And so I've prayed with tears, falling asleep this way many times, sometimes in broad daylight. I pray that I haven't let you down. I pray that I haven't violated my oath, that I've been true to what you did for me all my life. And I know that that's an entity that I'm talking to, because if there were no such entity, there would be nothing. There would be no science. There would be no love. There would be neither side of the human equation. We would have no emotions, and we would have no logic. It's so simple that I think any child can understand it. And this is what I wanted to say. This is actually what motivated me to make this video right now, after a little more than a half an hour. It's that in order to enter into bliss or enlightenment, or as it's put by all the ancient religions, into the kingdom of heaven, in order to enter that kingdom, you can only enter as a little child. As a full-grown adult, you're too big to get in. Your head is too big. Your ego is too big. Your problems are too great to let you into heaven. You won't go. You'll be blocked. You'll be excluded. Islam goes further, and so does Yeshua. You will be sent somewhere you don't want to go, from which you will never get out. And modern, enlightened European white men hate that. Hate it. They despise that message. because it's a threat. Oh, yes, it is. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. That's what Yeshua said. So if you're a Christian, you know that. If you're Islam, you certainly know that. That is your religion. You have to try. You have to believe. You have to repent. You have to convert. But to what? What are you converting to? You see, Americans, and I'll just say Europeans in general, in modern times, confuse submission to heaven with submission to some body of ugly humans. And all human organizations are severely ugly, including the leadership of Iran, of Arabia, and every other country. All governments are corrupt, but it extends to the government of a church. Every rational man knows that the Catholics are going to hell. They're absolutely crazy because they don't conform to the will of heaven, but it's worse. They pretend that they do. There's a lot of deception, a lot of pretenders in groups of men. So you're not submitting to me by listening to me. When I talk about the ancient books of wisdom, the Ching of the Chinese, the Qur'an of the Arabians, and now many other countries, including Iran, the Islam people believe in the Qur'an. The Chinese people, historically at least, have known that their book of I Ching is wisdom. I fully agree. What do these things have in common? For instance, the older books of the Bible. Are they consonant with wisdom? Absolutely. You know what the common thread is? It's not heaven and hell. It's nature. Specifically heaven, which I hope you've noticed is part of nature. We get sunlight, and the moon affects the tides. So yes, we're directly involved with heaven at all times. And any child can see that. And I say, for most people that I've met, only as children could they see reality. By the age of 14 or 15, it was all over because of societal, cultural, and governmental influence. You never had a chance. Well, is that fair? Islam says it is. You're still responsible for choosing the way of heaven, which is what? This is where I just don't know what to say because I have to state the obvious. If when you look at nature, you do not see the hand of a creator, then you're out of your mind and you're not human. You're not human. When you look at the birds, when you look at the cycles of nature, when you look at the organization of plants and animals, when you look at the construction of just the human body, that had to be done by a superior mind. There is no way around it, no matter what modern scientists say. They're out of their minds. And that's how it's going to end. Anybody who listens to modern science in any way, general relativity, quantum mechanics, anything to do with the black hole or the Big Bang, anything like that, you think that that's true in any way, you're going to hell. Because you are not paying attention to what you should be paying attention to. The enemy deceived you. And if you're that easily deceived, you can't live with men like me and the Islam people. We won't like you. If you were in heaven with us, you would die. And so you're going to hell instead, because eternal torment that you must endure has to be away from the good people. We'll be made to be good, because that's what we're seeking. You're not. You're not trying to seek good at all, because you listen to these crazy people and you're unable to wake up. Men like Richard Dawkins, Brian Greene, Michio Kaku. I could name 200 other men that are just absolutely determined to be stupid. But they're much worse than that. They want you to go to hell with them. Oh yeah, the universe is expanding, huh? Who would say that except for Satan himself? Defying the law of God. Your job is not to figure out where the universe originated. Your job is not to figure out the fundamental force balance of the atom, or the quarks, or the gluons, or anything else that your ugly, retarded mathematicians have made up out of thin air. Even when they're right, they're wrong. Nothing about science is good. Nothing about science is good. There's a footnote, though, isn't there? Isn't it nice to have flush toilets? Isn't it nice to have electricity? Yeah, and that's more condemnation. How come human beings didn't exclusively devote themselves to the good side of science, that is, technology? There are bombers now that are heading for Iran. Missiles, drones, whatever you want to call them, destructive devices from Israel. What do you think that means? It means it's time for you to wake up and choose sides. But it's not between Israel and Iran. It's between true religion and false religion. What's the religion of the Israelis? What's the religion of the United States? You have to decide that, but if you can't, your mind isn't working right. You've been poisoned. So I give you the message that Yeshua gave. Unless you become as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And then shall the great one, the ineffable one, blessed be his name, shall say to those on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, and inherit the... Actually, that would be Yeshua. Come, ye blessed of my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And then he shall turn to those on his left hand, those who make missiles, those who do science and never learn to respect their own creator, anybody who misleads children, anybody who lies, deceives. You're not getting away with it, ever. He will say to you, Depart from me, you workers of iniquity, and join the devil with all of his angels in eternal fire. The Islam people preach that. So did Yeshua. Christian, are you? Because if you don't listen now, you're not a Christian. I'm telling you, you'd better listen. So thank you for tuning in. It's now to save your life. And if you don't listen to me, there won't be another man that comes after me who reaches out to you in any way. So if you don't like what I say, it's because the Qur'an is right about you. Nothing can save you. So tune in as I teach you from the ancient books of wisdom, including the Ching. All of these books talk about nature and the cycles of heaven, the sun and the moon and the stars. That's astronomy. That alone is science. When it's for religion, so you learn about your Creator, His might, and His awesome power and love. If you don't bow the knee to that, you're going to hell with Satan himself. Thank you. I'll be right back.